Alrighty, everyone. Great to see you all. Today's our A plus day. We're going to be talking the 1002 exam I recently took last week. So I'm just going to be giving a recap of my experience and what to look out for. And if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and shout them out. So before I get started, I just want to get an idea of everyone here. How many are working on this exam currently on the 1002, and how many are working on the 1001? Okay, so we have a 1001 tomorrow. All right, so we'll definitely make sure that we address that and any questions you have there. Who else? Okay, Steve's on the 1002. Anyone else currently preparing for the 1002? Neither? Okay. What are you working on, Steve? .1001. Okay, so we have a few 1001s. PowerPoint. Yeah, PowerPoint. Just I would recommend the Monday sessions for you because we don't talk a lot of office stuff in the CompTIA sessions. Unless you have CompTIA on your timeline, you're just trying to get like a foreshadowing of what you're going to see when you get there. But I recommend kind of just focusing on whatever objective set you're currently on. But I seen D. Okay, networking stuff. All right, so there's a little mix here, but no worries. Still gonna go as planned. Okay, no worries. All right, so 1002, in a nutshell, it's basically like every other CompTIA exam that you're gonna see. The structure, as far as the structure goes, and with the main focus obviously being software operating system stuff, right? So this is your introduction to security, okay, and your operating systems is something that's on the exam. Software troubleshooting, that's all a lot of this on the exam. Okay, so basically, so I got one performance-based question. Okay, there was only one, which is, it's kind of following the same trend that I've been noticing since I first started. My first exam had close to like 7 or 8 of them. And as they update the exams, they seem to be going to fewer and fewer. So this exam only had one. It had to do with partitioning. So just make sure that you're comfortable with the partitions, not only the characteristics of them, but know how to extend them or shrink them, or know the characteristics, your basics versus your dynamic and that stuff. Okay, that is a do it question, so it's not just about your knowledge. It's about being able to apply it in that situation. Okay, so just make sure that you're ready for that one. After that, it was all multiple choice. Okay, I got 82 questions. Let's see, Clinton saying on the 902, you had a lot more scenario-based questions. Well, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about scenario-based questions. Half of the exam is scenario-based. I'm just talking about the performance-based questions where they're asking you to do something. Okay, so, like for instance, I forgot what it was that they asked me to do. There were a couple partitions that they wanted me to set up. So you have to make sure that you're comfortable doing that. Or, it's going to be one that gives you problems. But, I normally save those for the end anyway. So, okay. So you're saying that you got 10 performance-based questions on the 902, huh? That seems like a lot. Seems like a lot even for. I don't think I've ever gotten 10. The closest that I've got to 10 was probably my first A plus which was 801. And I think I had like 7 or 8, but never 10. But yeah, I mean, either way, you have to be prepared for it. Okay, you're not gonna see more than. I mean, I've taken probably like around 10 CompTIA exams now, or something like that, somewhere close to it, and they seem to be getting. I mean, smaller. Like the last Net Plus exam I took, I probably had like 3. Security Plus, I probably had like 2 or 3. So, anyway, that's the last version of the exam. My version only had 1. So, if that's any consolation to you guys, then there you go. Yeah, that would be my strategy too, Clinton. I would just flag them all, and then just come back at the end, do them at the end, so you're not wasting time trying to figure them out. So, okay. So yeah, I got 82 questions. 1 was performance-based. The rest were multiple choice, mostly scenario-based questions, covering a variety of all of this stuff in here. Okay, so the stuff that stood out, there's quite a bit of operating system stuff in there where they're asking about, they're asking about compatibility or specs, right? Specifications for a certain operating system. How much RAM are you going to see? It's going to show in the 32-bit system, right, versus the 64. Stuff like that. So just make sure you do your homework there. Okay. I saw quite a few. I won't say quite a few, but anyone that was in the session that we had last week, we had a question that was asking about about removing malware. Right, and there were steps in that. If anyone didn't see that or they don't remember, you can go back and watch the replay. But there is a question in there that is identical to about 2 or 3 questions that I saw covering this. Okay, sorry about that. See, now I got to edit. Okay. So yeah, like I was saying, I saw probably 2 or 3 questions on the exam that were pretty identical to one of the questions that I used in our session last week involving this right here. So if anyone wants to get an idea for that, go watch the session that we did last week. It is in the forum. Okay. It's important to understand these steps and know what you're going to do when you're at one step and moving to the next one. Okay. I had probably 3 or 4 questions on Linux commands and stuff. I didn't have a lot of that. So, between Mac and Linux, I probably got, I don't know, maybe 5 questions at the most. Okay, so you're not going to see a lot on Mac and Linux, but if you do your homework on the stuff, like it'll be they're like give me questions, right? Because it's just going to be about, you want to do this, which command would you use, right? Or right, you want to see a list of the directory in Linux, which command would you use? Or you want to create a restore point in Linux, right? Which command would you use? You want to change ownership of a file or something like that, which one would you use? So if you do your homework on just the commands and stuff and the features, what they're called, try to relate it to something that's familiar, right? So for me, what was it that the dock, right? The dock in Mac is like the taskbar down here, right? So I just try to relate it to something. It's like the taskbar on Windows. It's the dock. The Finder, right? It's like the search tab. So if you can relate it to something that you're already familiar with, then it'll help with these features, right? These will all be like See, like you're doing it here, right? Restore snapshot, right? Backup time machine. Same deal. So it's 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 restore in Windows and it's time machine in Mac, right? So if you can just relate something to these that you're familiar with, it makes it a lot easier when they ask you about it on the exam. Because at the end of the day, you're just trying to do something. It's just depending on the operating system that you're using, which feature you're going to use to do it. You know, if you want to create a restore point, which feature are you going to use in a Mac versus in Linux, right? So, like I said, I didn't see too many on those, but if you get these down, those will be giving me questions. Okay. One thing that I noticed on the exam, there were a lot of questions that I was really comfortable with the answer that I chose. Okay. And then there were a lot of answers where I wasn't. Okay. So the more comfortable that you can feel, you know, obviously the better, because there's going to be answers there's going to be questions that you know the answer to, and then there's going to be some where you think you know the answer, but there's another answer that looks good too, and so you're going to be on the fence. There's going to be quite a bit of those. So the more you understand, the more homework you do, the better your shot is going to be. Okay. Security. I saw quite a bit of security on the exam. It was just, you know, it was kind of simple stuff. They were saying, look, you want to be able to do this and you want to be able to do this. What features are you going to use? Okay, and they'll just give you a list. Sometimes they want you to pick one. Sometimes they want you to pick multiple ones. But, you know, I'll give you an example. There was a business that wanted their employees to have access to the Wi-Fi, right? But they didn't want anyone else to have access to it. They didn't want the team across the street was stealing Wi-Fi, right? So they wanted to eliminate that, but they wanted their employees to have access to it. And then there was something else. I think they gave you other specifications, right? And so you just go through the list and you pick out the stuff that's going to do what they're asking, right? You enable encryption, right? You give your employees the passwords, and that kind of solves that problem. And then whatever else, you know, they specify that they want you to do, you just look for that stuff. Okay, so, you know, one case maybe it's multi-factor authentication, something like that, right? They want it to be so that it's not easy. You know, maybe we're talking about healthcare information or something like that, right? So now we want it so that it's hard, it's not easy for you to log in, right? So, you know, what do? You enable encryption, you enable multi-factor authentication, right? Things like that. So that's what I mean. There's going to be scenarios like that they're going to put you in, and then you just go through and you just choose the features that work, the best ones that are given to you. Okay. I did good questions on the encryption. So just make sure that you understand the basics of this. It doesn't go into too much detail with this, right? At this point, I'm not going to be asking like security plus type stuff. Just understand like which encryption you will use in which situation, which scenario would you use what. You know, stuff like that. Okay. Let's see what else. Social engineering, I saw it. You're going to see it. So just do your homework on these and make sure you know what they are. And if you do, it's going to be a give me. Like I said, some of this stuff is just about making sure that you know the characteristics of something, right? If you can compare and you can contrast something, it really helps, right? You know the difference. And then what you want to do, look for the stuff that's similar, all right? And make sure and find out what separates them. Okay, that's the best way to avoid getting caught off guard or getting confused. Find the ones that are similar and figure out what separates them. Okay. What else? Power user. Yeah, I got a question on this too. BitLocker. Passwords. Okay. So I'm trying to remember the stuff that I saw. So I'm just scrolling through the objectives here. While I'm doing this, trying to think of stuff, are there any questions that anyone has in particular or any comments? Okay, so this is something else that I saw. Securing the Soho. For those of you that will be moving on to Net Plus after A Plus, this is something that's going to come back. Okay, then this is something that you're going to see again on security if you have security. So it's better to kind of get a feel for this now while you're on A Plus, but just at the appropriate level. But yeah, I mean, you're going to see stuff like this, right? It's kind of, I saw quite a few questions that were asking me about, okay, how do you secure this Soho? Okay, how do you make this more secure? Or we have an access point that we want you to set up, and this is what we want. These are the features that we need available, or these are the parameters that we're looking for. So you just look for, what it is that you need to do. Okay, and tenant access point placement. We actually did an activity on this on Friday in the Net Plus session. So if you want to get an idea for how to do this, you can go watch that replay. We did it on the hands-on simulator. So we actually did an activity that had antennas and access points, and we placed them throughout the building in the way that they asked us to. So definitely something you probably want to get some good practice on. Okay, software troubleshooting. This is probably the area that you will see the most of on this exam, if I am correct. So I scroll back up, 26% on. So operating systems, software troubleshooting. The exam's pretty well balanced, but software troubleshooting stands out because those are the questions that are more than likely are going to give you the multiple answers that could all be correct. Okay, there could be like out of 4 answers, 3 of them could all be correct, just depending on what they're asking you in the question. Okay, so just pay close attention when you see questions like these. Okay, look for those keywords. I talk about that a lot in just about all of these sessions, especially when we're doing practice questions, activities, and things like that. The keywords are key. Okay, they give away what they're looking for, so you have to make sure if you're confused after you read a question and you go down to your answers and you're like, okay, it could be this, it could be this, and it could be this, right? When you feel like that, make sure you go back up to the question, look for the keyword. Most of the time, it is in all caps. Once again, I noticed the same thing on my last probably 4 exams that I've taken. Okay, I didn't even really realize it the first few times, but it stands out now. A lot of the questions, they have a key word in it. Most of the time, it's in the answer. I mean, not the answer, I'm sorry. Most of the time, it's in the actual question. When you get down to the bottom of the scenario that they're putting you in, and then they give you the question, most of the time there's a word in there that is all caps. And it may be first, it may be best, it may be next, it may be most likely, something like that. Okay, maybe not. Okay, so just make sure that when you get these questions, these software troubleshooting questions, you go back and you look at those keywords. Okay, it's going to give away what you're looking for. All right. Quite a few. A I saw quite a few of these, and it's just, you start an application, or and after you start the application, you start noticing that your system start acting weird. What's the most likely cause of this? Or they may say, you tried this and you tried this. After doing this and doing that, you notice this. What do you do next? Okay. That's how they're going to present the questions for you. So, just make sure you do whatever you can to prepare yourself for that. Most of the questions are going to be, some type of scenario-based troubleshooting type question, okay? And that's why I say all those other questions, like the port questions and, like the feature questions, like the Mac and the Linux feature type questions. If you do your homework on those will be give me's. And then when you get down here, you're going to get a lot of toss-ups because there's so many answers that could likely solve the problem, just depending on what stage you're at and what you've already tried. And sometimes it's hard to kind of figure out, exactly what CompTIA is getting at. I'll just put it like that. So, yeah, I had quite a few questions on this exam that kind of had me scratching my head. And I'm not new to this. I've been A+ certified for 5 years now. Yeah. January 2014. So, and even me, I'm sitting there looking at questions like, okay, what the hell? So, that's just, that's my warning to everyone. This section right here, it can be confusing, okay? It can throw you off, even people that are a little bit more experienced. So just read the question. That's really what it boils down to. Make sure you read the question and you understand what they're asking, and then, go with your gut, okay? A big no-no that I want to make sure that I throw out there for everyone, because this is a mistake that I made this past exam. I normally don't do this, but so normally what I do when I'm going through the exam is I'll go through it once, and I'll go with my gut. There's answers that I'm pretty sure, there's no doubt on, and then there's some that I'm on the fence about, like this section here. Okay, then there may be one or two that are just left field. Okay, but for the most part, I just kind of go through it. Anything that I'm on the fence about, I flag it. And then when I get to the end, I'll go back and then I'll I'll do the ones that I skipped at the beginning, and then I'll go back to the ones that I flagged and just kind of take a look at them and see if there's anything that I want to change. And then for the most part, I don't change anything. This past exam, I almost took it twice. I went through it once, and then when I got to the end, I went back, and then I went through it again, just going through all my answers and making sure I was comfortable with all of them, and I changed more than I normally would. So I would advise against that. At the end of the day, you don't know if it's bringing your score down or if it's bringing it up. But unless you're sure about something. So the ones that I'm on the fence about, I don't change. I always go with my gut unless I'm sure that I'm wrong and it needs to be the other one. But there were a few of them where, even though I wasn't sure it should be changed, I changed them anyway. So I just want to advise about that. Always go with your gut. Okay, it's much better to fall a little short if you're going with your gut than it is to to make a change when there's no real reason to do it other than just a little itch. So, but anyway, overall, like I said, it's these exams are pretty identical to, when you talk about the structure, they're identical to what you're going to see on any CompTIA exam. Your A+, the first one's the same. The way they structure the questions, Net Plus security, it's just you're responsible for more in-depth information as you move forward. So when you get to Net Plus, it's not just about ports and protocols. You have to understand what they're doing. You have to be able to spell them out. When you get to Security Plus, it's not just about knowing what they're doing. You have to know if they're secure or not, right? What scenarios are you going to use? That is it safe to use certain protocols, and what scenarios do you not want to use certain protocols and things like that. So, it's just each exam is building on what you're learning previous and throwing in extra information at the same time. But the structure of the exam is the same, okay? I do want to touch on this area before I'm done, because this is a pretty significant area as well. Okay, this is probably 20, I forgot it was like 22% or something like that, but you're going to see stuff here too. Okay, so just make sure that you do your homework here. Jason does a good job of covering a lot of this stuff, and there's other resources that I know some of you have already using that do a good job of covering this stuff too. So, just make sure that you understand each and every sub-objective, every plot point, everything here is all in play. You don't know what you're going to see on your exam, right? I can tell you what I saw, and you can go take your exam and have a totally different experience. So the best way to avoid getting thrown off guard is just to cover everything, cover as much as you can. Okay, I can't say that I saw any one thing more than anything else, except for, troubleshooting is something that you're going to see on these exams. Is there, right? But other than that, everything is kind of, it's a pretty decent blend of all of this stuff in there. So there's no one area where I would say, okay, for this exam, just key in here or key in there. Any questions on the 1002? None? Okay. Well, that's it for me as far as the recap goes. I mean, it wasn't a overly difficult exam. It wasn't an overly easy exam. Okay, it's kind of in the middle. The more experience you have going into it, the better your chances. So if you don't have prior experience, what I would say is just find a way to supplement it. Okay, so one of the things that I did when I was trying to learn the Linux commands, right? So I just watched someone go through each of these commands, and I just mirrored it, just copied them, right? So if I go to VMware Workstation here, I actually have a 64-bit version of Ubuntu. Okay, this is something that I highly recommend that you do if you have the RAM for it. Ubuntu, your Linux virtual machines aren't going to take up too much RAM, right? You're not going to take up too many resources. You only need a gig of RAM to run it. And we're not going to be doing a bunch of crazy stuff either, right? We're just going through basic Linux commands. So if you have at least 8 gigs of RAM, you should be able to run a virtual machine, a Linux virtual machine. Your Windows ones take a little bit more, but at the same time, it's not too much, right? You need 2 gigs to run Windows 7 or 8, so you should be fine there. But yeah, that would be my recommendation is, set up some virtual machines, and as you're going through your training, mirror whoever's doing it. If you're watching Jason's training, when he's showing you this stuff, mirror it. Just kind of follow along, do what he's doing. It gives you that extra aspect to your learning, and it increases the chances of you retaining the stuff when you add an extra element to it instead of just listening. Because it's easy to do that, especially an online expert, because the session just drags, it just goes, and then you have a post-assessment at the end, and now you answer questions. Well, what you really should be doing is you should be doing activities, and you should be answering questions as you're going along, and that's what the workbook is for. So What did I use to study for the 1002? Okay, so um, this was kind of uh, this. I mean, this is a bit of a different scenario here because what I was doing was I was actually testing the our 902 material to see if it would hold up on the 1002 exam. Okay, and it did, but you have to make sure that you use the transition document because it maps what you're missing, right? The stuff that's been added and lets you know what's been added and what's missing from there. Okay, but another resource that I used is I used CertMaster. Okay, the way that I use CertMaster, and I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but oh, and also like the virtual machine, that's also right, that's a big one that I recommend that you do because there's different operating systems. But so let me come to CertMaster real quick just to give you an idea of how I use it. Okay, I'll try to compartmentalize everything. So instead of looking at everything as a whole, I just break it down into sections. There we go. That's not going to do it. CertMaster. Okay. For some reason, it's hard to get to CertMaster for me. I don't know why. Okay, so this is my strategy. Everyone has their own strategy. I'm just going to show you the one that works for me. And then you can decide, how you want to do it. But this is how I use CertMaster. Okay, I want to make sure that what I'm learning is pertinent. Okay, and I want to make sure that I'm picking up on it as I'm learning it, and make sure that I know what I'm not picking up on. Okay, so where we're let me use 1.9 as an example, right? The Mac OS and Linux client desktop. Okay, so I'll go through Jason's training, okay, when he's talking about all of this stuff, when he's going through all these features, right? He's saying this and that, this is what this is for, this is what that is for, this is when you're going to use this, this is when you're going to use that, okay? Well, only 1.9, because I don't want to, I'm not worried about this up here right now, I'm not worried about anything else, just 1.9, okay? So all I'm worried about is the Mac and the Linux stuff, all right? Once I'm done with that, now I'm going to go into CertMaster. Before I move on, right? I'm not going to go on to 1.10 and then start trying to learn this stuff before I figure out what I know here and what I don't know. Okay, so once I'm done learning this stuff, now I'm going to CertMaster. And I'm taking in an exam only on 1.9. Okay, this is only going to cover 1.9. It's only going to cover the Mac and the Linux stuff. Okay, so you go through here, and you take note. As you're going through, you just figure out, okay, which ones am I getting wrong, right? Which ones did I pick up on, right? I got this, and I got this, and I got this. And let's say I got a message wrong, a question wrong about the grep command, or, sudo or something like that. Well, now I know, okay, I need to come back to this. Maybe I don't need to come back to it now, right? Maybe I'll just come back to it after I'm done going through all of this, and I'm going through my objectives for a second time. Whatever, however it works for you. But I just break everything up into sections. So, and it could take a while to do this. It could seem a little bit tedious, but trust me, since I've started doing this, I haven't, knock on wood, but I haven't failed any CompTIA exams. I haven't blown them out of the water. Okay, I mean, I'm not, I'm not hitting like grand slams or anything, but I'm passing. And ever since I started using this strategy, I haven't had any blunders yet, knock on wood. But yeah, so you just break it up into one little section, right? Just do this area right here, okay? So take whatever training it is. Could be Jason, could be Professor Messer, Mike Myers, whoever you're using, okay? And as you're going through it, once you get through your first little section, test yourself on it before you move on to the next section. Figure out what it is you picked up on, what you didn't. Mark it off. The stuff that you did pick up on, leave the stuff that you didn't pick up on blank, and then move on. All right. So that is my strategy. And other than that, I didn't really, I used a few virtual machines, um, and just the training in CertMaster. That's it. I didn't use anything else for this particular exam. Now, Net Plus is a different story. All right, when I move on to Net Plus, I'm going to be using CertMaster again, but I'm also going to be using some virtual networking environments, right? Which I already have access to. I have the hands-on simulator here, right? And then I also have Packet Tracer, right? So what these do is they give me an environment where I can practice a lot of this stuff, right? I can practice doing this stuff. If I want to configure port security, right? If I want to practice that, I can do it here. And if I forgot how to do it, it'll walk me through how to do it here, right? So these are the type of tools that I learned from, that I learned the most from. Lectures work good, when it comes to the actual information, right? It's good to take lectures and take notes and stuff. Practice exams are good for testing your knowledge and understanding what it is that you picked up on and what you didn't. But for me, the real learning comes when you have the actual tool right in front of you, right? There's no substitute for having an actual, whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? So if you're trying to figure out how to secure stuff better, or whatever the case is, you have your devices here, and all of this stuff is configurable. So for me, this is when I move on to Net Plus. This is what I'm going to be using primarily. The gist of the information I already get, right? Just because it's not my first rodeo. So the core of the information I get. But for the stuff that you need to touch up on, you actually have to do it. So I'll be spending a lot of my time getting ready for Net Plus, in networking environments, just playing around with stuff, right? Watching the configuring, routing protocols, setting up security, telnetting, practicing telnetting and secure shell and all that type of stuff. That's the stuff that kind of, it solidifies the stuff for you when you're practicing that. So, let's see. I have a computer I use to test commands. Been going through the online videos, courses, modules, reading through the hard copy book, and using Ubuntu. Yeah, that's what you want to do. I can't tell you if you're ready for the exam or not. I mean, that's something that you kind of know, right? And I'll tell you when I know I'm ready for an exam. When I'm tired of studying, that's when I'm ready to take it, right? I've been through this stuff enough times where I'm tired of looking at it, and I'm tired of hearing like the same redundant information. I took this practice exam, I've took this one, right? I'm kind of, you get to the point where you feel like either you know this stuff or you don't. That's when you're ready to go take the exam. Okay, so I can't tell you when that is. That's something that you're gonna know. But I like what you're doing. Definitely test the commands. Okay, that's something that's gonna come up. That's something I did leave out. I'm sorry that I left that out. Your command line and your command line tools, right? Your Windows software troubleshooting tools like your check disk and your defrag, your SFC, your IP config, your ping, your trace route. Make sure you know all of those. What you're gonna do, what you're gonna use each of those for. Okay, I'm sorry I left that out, but that's big for this exam. Okay, your software troubleshooting. Make sure you understand that. This exam is not so much about like the hardware, right? Like the processor and the RAM and the connectors and stuff like that. That's your first exam. This one's more about what happens when you turn on your computer and it doesn't boot. How do you fix that, right? What do you do if the resolution is off? How do you extend the monitor? you're, we were talking a little bit about partition earlier, right? That was my first performance-based question. Make sure you understand the difference between all of these and what you can do. Some of the things that you can do with partitions. What else? Drivers. Just basic troubleshooting stuff. Okay, now I want to highlight something that I noticed on the exam. Okay, this is something you definitely want to look out for. They asked me a question about a common technique. Okay, so when they ask you about something that's common, all right, that's when you take CompTIA out of the equation. Okay, I'll give you an example. What is something that most people would do if, I'm trying to remember the question. My point is, all right, so, what would most people do if they notice that they're, I don't want to use a networking question. Okay, yeah, what would most people do if they thought that they had a virus? You thought that you had malware. What do you think most people would do? Anyone? Take the computer to the shop. No, don't do that. Don't do that yet. Quinn says run a scan, right? Don says scan or roll back, okay. Tyler says install antivirus program, all right. Scan, okay. All right, so most people say scan, okay. Actually, I'm glad I asked this question. This is one that we did last week too. I got a lot of people with that one. But, okay, so my point is the answer is quarantine, right? If you think that you have a virus, first thing you're going to do is quarantine it, right? Clayton got that. But the thing that comes to most people's mind first is scan, right? That's what most people say, scan. Okay, well, they asked me a question like that. And when they ask you a question like that, you have to be very careful. Go back to the question, make sure that they're not saying, if they're asking what will most people do, then it's scan. Okay? And I don't know why they ask this question. It's confusing. You're like, okay, well, I would scan, but when I look down here, it says quarantine first. So now you're caught between, okay, do I do what CompTIA wants me to do, or do I do what most people would do? And the answer is, you go back to the question and it said most people. Okay? Do not get confused by that. Always go back to the question. All right? Most of the time, they're going to be looking for what CompTIA is going to do, but in the instance that they do ask what most people would do or what is a common response, okay, those are a few of the questions that just had me like, okay, what am I supposed to do? If they're asking you what a common response is, then you go with what the first thing that comes to your mind, what most people would do, okay? So glad I remembered that, because that's something that stood out to me on that exam. Was it's confusing. Do you want me to do what I'm supposed to do, or do you want me to do what most people would do, or this is what I would do? How do I know what most people would do? You start having that going on in your head, and you kind of get pissed off at CompTIA for not being just straightforward. But they kind of were. It's just, I don't know, how you know what most people would do. And the answer to that is just go with the first thing that will pop up in your head. So in that instance, I would do scan too, even though I know the answer is quarantine. So, okay. Hopefully you guys get that. You can take it off the network. Yeah, quarantine the network, meaning take it off the network. Yeah, you want to isolate it, right? So you want to protect the network. You don't know what it is, right? If it's a worm, it could already be moving through the network. So the faster you disconnect it, the better. Okay. Took up a lot of time on this. Are there any? Where do I sign for CertMaster? You'll get CertMaster when you when you finish your sessions in Online Expert. Once you get through the last session, then you will get access to Start Master along with whatever else. Most cases it'll be you Certify for A+, where, by the way, you will have access to virtual machines that you do not have to install, but you just won't have all of them. You're not going to get Ubuntu. You'll get Windows 7 and Windows 8. You'll get access to those operating systems in you Certify, but not Windows 10. Most of you should be running Windows 10. So in that case, the only one that you're responsible for on this exam that you'd be missing is Linux and the Mac OS. Unless you have an iOS device, like an Apple device, then that'll cover some of the Mac stuff. So okay. Any other questions? A+. Are there any 1001 questions that you guys have? I'm sorry, I took a lot of time on the 1002 stuff. I want to make sure that I answer any 1001 stuff that you have as well. What separates the 1001 and the 1002? The objectives. So the 1001 is going to be more hardware based, right? So you're going to be it's going to be about your hardware, like the physical stuff on the computer, your motherboard, right? Your processor, your connectors, your RAM, your cabling, right? Just the physical aspect of the PC is the focus on the first exam, and the second exam is this stuff, right? It's operating systems, right? So your Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10. Your security, right? And that's the other thing that separates them is in the first exam, you get your introduction to networking, and in this exam, you get your introduction to security. So let me bring up the 1001. So objectives. There we go. All right. So I'll come over here, scroll down a bit. Right, and then this. So this doesn't work that well. But anyway, so you can see here, this is what separates them, right? Networking hardware versus operating systems, right? This is more software. This is software troubleshooting. This is hardware troubleshooting. See? So instead of giving you all this on one exam, they split it into two. Because it's just too much information to be responsible for. So can't think of any 1001 questions, just anxious to finally see it. Yeah, and that's kind of how you know that you're kind of at that point to just get in there. That's how I always knew I was ready to take an exam. Like I said, I was just tired of studying. I was tired of listening to lectures. I was tired of answering questions. I just wanted to get in there and take it. So that's when you'll know that you're ready. Okay. Yeah, no worries. If you have to take off, just leave your name, and that way I'll make sure I get you. I'm about to do the head count right now anyway. So, any other questions, concerns, comments? Nope. Alrighty. So, my final thought. Yeah, Austin. Actually, could you just type your last name? I already got your first name's already there. I just need your last name. Okay. Awesome. If you need to take off, that's fine. I'm about to do the head count real quick, but I'm gonna do just my final thought, my final take on the exam. These exams can be pretty simple depending on your experience level. They can be really hard. Okay, at the same time. So my advice is just do your homework. Okay, and don't rely on just one resource to prepare you for these. Use multiple resources. Okay. There's a ton of them. Some are free, some aren't. Start with the free ones. All right. I mean, if those are enough to get you over the hump, then fine. If they're not, then seek out whatever resources you can find that are going to help you solidify this stuff. Okay, it's not just about listening to lectures and taking notes. When it comes to this exam, you have to be able to apply a lot of the knowledge in a real life scenario. And some of the stuff, it takes practice. You don't just walk into an exam and say, okay, I'm gonna listen to a few lectures and take a few practice exams, and then I'm gonna go take the exam, right? You're gonna need some experience to back you up on some of this stuff. Okay, so spend some time playing around with resources. Like I just gave you an idea of what I'm going to be doing in preparing for the Net Plus exam. It's not just going to be about lectures and taking notes. Okay, I'm going to be playing with a network on a daily basis to the point to where the stuff is like secondhand to me. Okay, that's what it takes sometimes. And so figure out what it's going to take for you. Find those resources and use them. That's my advice. Okay. All right. Austin, got you. Okay. Oh, okay. So with that said, we'll go ahead and close the session. The next session will be on on Thursday. We'll be covering Security Plus stuff. All right. I will talk to you all next time. Have a great one.